Recording while I introduce my speaker. So thank you to everybody for coming tonight to our Conversations with CAGT. I'm Dr. Colleen Ehrlich, and it is my honor to be the president of CAGT. And with us tonight, we have Shelagh Gallagher, Dr. Shelagh Gallagher, who is going to soon be announced as the next president-elect for the National Association for Gifted Children. So huge congratulations to you, Dr. Gallagher, on that. And she is going to join us to give an update on what is happening nationally with gifted education. So it's not only imperative that we are locally, advocate for our gifted children and educators and families and everyone who has that touch point on our gifted children's lives, but also that we're aware of those national initiatives. So we greatly thank you for coming here this evening. And Dr. Gallagher will share NAGC's work and involvement on the national level so that we can better support education and those policies at the national level as well as at our state level. And so with that, Dr. Gallagher, I will give it to you.
Well, thank you so very much, Colleen. And thank you all for being here tonight. I really appreciate the opportunity to speak with you about NAGC and about some of NAGC's initiatives. I'm going to really focus in tonight on what NAGC has to offer. For those of you who are members, some of this may be review, but I hope that you'll see that there's something new for everybody at NAGC right now. So I'm going to take just a second to share the screen and go into the PowerPoint presentation I prepared, and with some luck, you will be able to now see the PowerPoint. Is that right, Colleen?
Yes, that is correct. We can see it.
Okay, great. All right. So here we are. And that picture on the screen right now, that obviously isn't me with blonde hair. That's Dr. Lori Kirsch, the incoming president of NAGC, as Jonathan Plucker finishes his very challenging 2 years in COVID and moves aside to the past president role. Lori will take on the mantle of NAGC president. The National Association for Gifted Children, for those of you who are new to the organization, is the nation's, if not the world's, largest organization supporting gifted students, their teachers, their families, and any and all who nurture and support their growth and development. I thought we would spend some time tonight.
Sheila, really fast, sorry. I can see actually you're in the screen twice.
Oh.
So if you move that out and then on my screen, you show up, so you can remove that screen down. Almost like there. Yep, that's perfect.
Okay, great. Thank you. So here we go to the NAGC website, I hope. Colleen, give me a go here.
You are good to go.
Excellent. Okay, here we are on the NAGC website. And there are lots and lots of resources here for you, whether you are a beginner to gifted education or whether you've been in the field for many years. And I thought it would be helpful to just scroll around a little bit and show you all that we have to offer. First of all, of course, we would love for you to join NAGC and be a part of this great, engaging, dynamic group of professionals who are interested in advanced learning. Once you join NAGC, there are a lot of different subgroups that you can participate in that would probably match at least one of your particular interests in gifted education, whether it's twice exceptional gifted students, whether it's gifted students of color, whether it's early childhood gifted education, or research in gifted education if you think you're bound for a higher degree, or even if you want to do some action research. We have a brand new network this year I'm very excited about, which is dedicated to gifted education coordinators. So those of you who serve in supervisory roles, whose job it is to create an umbrella for the gifted programs across a district. We have dedicated areas to creativity and the arts, professional learning, social and emotional development. We have a network for GLBTQ gifted students, special populations. Again, it runs the gamut. We also have smaller groups and less formal groups called SIGs, or special interest groups, around gifted students from rural areas. And I know that Colorado has a vast rural population. Gifted students, or your interest in assessing gifted students. If you are interested in Native American gifted students, or if you are a member of a university and want to talk about your program, your syllabi, the courses that you offer, again, we have a niche for you within NAGC. We have lots of information for you. And again, some of this is organized on the website according to your role and position. Some of it is more general, but for instance, if we go under NAGC publications, you'll see if you join NAGC, you have access to different publications which occur regularly. Gifted Child Quarterly is our research journal where we provide the cutting edge information associated with gifted learners. More informal publications are PHP, which is Parenting for High Potential, and THP, Teaching for High Potential, which are practitioner journals that give you practical advice on how to do gifted education in the classroom or how to raise your gifted child at home. Also under publications, let's see if I can find Gifted by State. Every so often, NAGC publishes a document called State of the States in Gifted Education. And this is a compilation of the policies and practices in gifted education across the nation. As you know, we're different from special education in that we do not have a federal omnibus piece of legislation that gives us guidance on how to implement gifted education across the nation. So each state has the latitude of doing things somewhat differently. How do you compare with other states? Well, if you go to the 2018-2019 State of the State reports, which has just been published, you'll have a place where you can compare what Colorado does to other states. It'll show you where you shine. And it'll also show you and perhaps give you some ammunition to talk to others about where other states are doing things perhaps a little better or even just a little differently that you think could improve services for gifted students in your state. You'll also see here under each state, NAGC provides the contact information. Of course, I know you know this already, for the person who is in charge of gifted education at the state level, and also how to contact your state organization, which I presume you know since you're here already. Other things that you have are opportunities to get even further involved if you want to be active in making change in gifted education. For example, and let me see if I can find it now. I want to get to volunteer and opportunities to contribute. When you're a member of NAGC, you have the opportunity to become a volunteer and get more involved on the national level in a variety of ways. First of all, there's lots of opportunities to volunteer, to be within a network and become somebody who reviews sessions for the national convention, somebody who chairs a special group to create a position paper on a particular topic within gifted education. Those who are very interested and approach the Leadership Development Committee can become appointed to a task force or to a committee which take on specific topics for changing gifted education. You could become a chair of one of those networks or a chair of the program committee. And then, of course, after you're involved for a certain amount of time in specific roles, you become qualified to run for the board of directors, to become a board officer, or who knows, you could be the next president-elect of NAGC someday. So lots of opportunities to get involved in a variety of ways. We need more advocates than we have. We always need more advocates than we have. And I really encourage you to come and join this group of educator advocates because really there's nothing like the consensual validation of being together around a particular cause that we all believe in. And I'll come back to that in a minute. I'm going to leave the website now and say one of the most exciting new pieces that we have to offer through NAGC is NAGC Engage. Again, very often you can feel like a lone wolf in your classroom if you're the only gifted teacher in your building. And what we want to provide at NAGC is an opportunity for you to network, not just once a year at the annual state convention or the annual gifted convention, but throughout the year. And so the Engage platform is something that we've just started so that members of NAGC who are members of particular networks, say the curriculum network, have an opportunity to meet together and talk to each other, not formally, but informally around issues that are important to you. They asked me to talk about initiatives tonight, and by far, the most important initiative that we're engaged in right now is equity in gifted education. Those of you who have been around for a while know that this has been a topic of interest for a long time. And starting with the gifted, well, not starting with, but the most recent iteration of that before a couple of years ago was the Giftedness Knows No Boundaries campaign. And if I can get access to my arrow again, where'd it go? Well, maybe we, oh, there it is. Come here. Whoops, I found it. Let's see. There we go. Giftedness Knows No Boundaries, which was the outcome of our last strategic plan at NAGC, where we created pretty much a public awareness campaign around what giftedness can look like in different populations. And if you click on the Explore tab at this website, you'll go to a set of resources that you can use to help communicate with other people around equity in gifted education. And one of the nicest resources that I love are these nifty posters that say, see me, understand me, teach me, and the wonderful diversity of what giftedness can look like. But that is just a starting point for us. Last summer, when we all witnessed the horrific murder of George Floyd and Ahmaud Arbery and Breonna Taylor, we finally decided it was time for us to get very serious about equity in gifted education, but not just in gifted education, but equity within NAGC. So we created a position paper called Championing Equity, and I've provided a link to the website. I won't go there right now, but you'll see the heading as I copied and pasted onto the slide. And if you scroll down, you'll come down to a lengthy statement of our commitment to equity in all aspects of our practice in gifted education. One of the major things that we've been involved with associated with that initiative is revising all of our policies so that we are explicit about our intention to be equitable across all groups, all races, all ethnic groups. We even just this week passed our first equity policy for NAGC, and we're very glad to finally have that in place. One of the first follow-up initiatives that we engaged in to demonstrate that we are eager to walk this talk is to have one of our first symposium on equity for Black and Brown gifted students. And if you were able to attend this symposium, it was a great opportunity to be with the likes of Tarek Grantham, April Wells, Christina Collins, Donna Ford, Jaime Castellano, Dina Bruyes, and other leaders in gifted education around the areas of equity. And it was just an amazing few days of learning and discussing and sharing ideas about how we can make our gifted programs more equitable. The content for this conference will be available until October, and I think we're looking at how we can make that content available to others who didn't necessarily register to participate in the program in August. Another related piece that we're looking at around the issue of equity in gifted education is the reintroduction of the Advanced Coursework Equity Act, which is being sponsored by Cory Booker from the Senate and Joaquin, oh dear, I'm not going to remember his last name, from Texas, Joaquin Castro, there it is on the slide, that would provide grant money to look at ways to close the excellence gap in gifted education. So we are in support of this bill. We are working to see where it goes. It's a little too early this year to know exactly where it stands, but we are going to be keeping an eye on that for sure. And of course, we're coming to Colorado. It's been 10 years and we are so excited to be back. And I promise you that I, for one, will be there if there's any way possible to be there face to face. We are so excited to be at the Gaylord Rockies Resort and Convention Center on November 10th to 14th. As Colleen mentioned, we will have a hybrid program for those of you who can't come face-to-face or feel uncomfortable coming face-to-face. And we will have more information about that and open registration to that event after Labor Day. Like last year, we will also be offering site licenses for schools and districts for groups of people to come to the virtual part of the convention, although the structure of it will be a little bit different this year than it was last year, with some tiered offerings depending on the size of district or the size of your school. For those of you who want to attend face-to-face, we are in constant conversation with people, our local arrangements team in Colorado, about what the latest regulations are, but we are looking at all sorts of options to provide verification of vaccination or verification of a negative COVID test. We're looking at masking, which I think may be required at this point, but we're really, really working hard to find a way to work this out. One of the reasons I would be excited to be there in person is because our keynote speaker will be Jeffrey Blunt. He's an award-winning author and television producer. He's written 3 novels, all of which are award winners. His first is Almost Snow White, the winner of the 2013 USA Best Book Award. The second book was Hating Heidi Foster, which won the 2013 Reader's Favorite Book Award for Young Adult Literature. But his most recent book, The Emancipation of Evan Walls, goes straight to the heart of what we're about in gifted education, because it's about a gifted young man who's caught between 2 worlds, the worlds of gifted education and his home world, and how he works out that relationship as he walks through both universes. Mr. Blunt is also an Emmy-winning television director and a 2016 inductee to the Virginia Communications Hall of Fame. During his 34-year career with NBC News, he also directed a decade of Meet the Press, The Today Show, NBC Nightly News, and major special events. So he really is a leader in the field of communications. He's a well-known author, and it will be very interesting to hear what he has to say about giftedness and gifted education. As those of you who experienced the virtual conference last year know, this is also a huge time of transformation and how we deliver professional learning opportunities. And we are looking very closely at that, at not just having a virtual conference, but having a meaningful, dynamic, engaging virtual conference. So one of the things that we're also involved with, and I have the delight of co-chairing, is a task force specifically around the convention about how we can continue to offer the best of the virtual world along with the best of the face-to-face world moving forward. as we dig into these conversations, we're also looking at how do we deliver professional learning at times outside of the convention so that we can provide you with a continual feed of ideas and strategies, perhaps that are targeted towards different groups of people involved in gifted education. So we're really looking forward to making some decisions around that and enrolling what the future could look like for professional learning in NAGC. In the meantime, we will continue to offer our traditional Leadership and Advocacy Conference next March. Again, we hope it will be face-to-face, but if it's not, we will do it virtually as we did it last year. Those of you who are interested in being better advocates on behalf of gifted students, this is your conference. Unlike the convention, which is a large event with thousands of people, this is a smaller, targeted think tank of people who really are digging into how do we create change from people outside of gifted education so that we can provide better gifted education for the students that we serve. I'm really excited about this year's conference because we're going to be led and it's going to be organized by a new member of the NAGC staff, David Cutler, who's coming to us from TESOL. He's going to become NAGC's new Director of Government Relations and Public Affairs. And I'm really looking forward to meeting him at our board meeting in a couple of weeks in Washington. But he comes with a rich background on how to affect change both regionally and at the national level. So I'm excited about learning from him and what he brings to the table for us at NAGC. I want to leave time for your questions. So I'm going to stop there and just say, if you want to contact any one of us, I'm giving you the contact information here for John Segota, the Executive Director of NAGC, Lori Kirsch, our president, and there's a picture of me before I had COVID hair and my email address as well. So I want to encourage you to reach out, and if you have a question, if you want to get involved, please be in touch because we'd be eager to hear from you. With that, I'm going to end the slideshow and end the share screen.
Perfect. Thank you so much.
Okay.
So we do have a few questions. So first of all, I think a question you can just hit right out of the gates. We have someone who joins us almost every single Tuesday from Malaysia. So hello, Aileen, nice to see you. And she is wondering if she can join NAGC even though she lives in another country.
Absolutely. We have many international members.
And Aileen, I would, if you ever want to go to a great conference, NAGC really does have a huge global partnership, and it's really a great time to connect with people, not just from within the United States, but just from around the world. So it's pretty neat to see the countries that are represented at an NAGC conference. We have a couple of questions that came in from membership, so we'll kind of start with those. So one question that came in is, will gifted response to intervention be developed and shared as a national focus in the future?
I think that gifted RTI is of interest to a lot of people within gifted education. I know that there are already several books on the topic of how to use RTI methodology to enhance gifted education. So I don't know whether the question is like, is it going to become a main focus within gifted education? Which my guess is it will not, because there are so many needs for variation across different settings. But will it become part of our toolkit in gifted education moving forward? I think the answer is probably yes.
Yeah, I think obviously they emailed it in, so I'm not entirely sure, but certainly in Colorado, RTI seems to be a little bit more like deficit based in terms of students who are struggling or students who aren't showing the growth that we would want them to see. So I would think that they're asking, could it be that same model be used? to either identify students or to program for them if they're not showing growth also.
Yeah. And there are books. I think Mary Ruth Coleman and Susan Johnson co-authored a book on RTI and gifted education. So if that's the question, I would definitely recommend looking up that book.
And the next one, if you are looking to write another dissertation, go ahead and answer this one. So this one's on scripted curriculums, basal curriculums, and just the question is, how can we reconcile scripted basal curriculum with our gifted students' needs?
That is such a tough question, because I know that teachers feel hemmed in sometimes by the requirements of being on the same page as the teacher next door, almost to the same sentence. And that is very, very restrictive. But I would say that even in that environment, that there's always room for a higher order question, so that if you work not on the curriculum, but on your questioning strategies, you can always pull the curriculum up higher. You can always insert a conceptual level into that. It doesn't take a lot of time to push each and every lesson up a notch. And this is one of the things that I've been really focusing on in my work is, just those small shifts upward that can help make the difference for a child. I think curriculum compacting for individual students is also a way to go, depending on how flexible your administration is around using a strategy like that, where if a child can test out of what's in that basal curriculum and can be given a contract around a separate area of learning, then you can meet different needs at the same time. Again, everybody feels like really restricted, but the question is, where do the restrictions begin and end? Because almost everybody has an area of flexibility too. And sometimes if you approach the administrator proactively, I've just learned about the strategy and I'd like to try that in my classroom. Often they're not going to say no to you because you're showing that you're an engaged teacher. But again, it really does depend on the administrator.
Mm-hmm. Yes, so much hints on the administrator, as we were talking about before. So another question that came up from the chat was around, and I know that you talked about it a little bit in terms of the equity pieces and networks, but let's just say that I'm a parent, passionate, maybe not super satisfied with what I see happening for my own student or for students around me. So what would NAGC, what would be the first click that you would have me do to support Black girls and boys that I encounter?
Well, again, we do have a lot of resources on our website, position papers, white papers that you can download and share with your administration and with teachers. I think moving teachers to culturally responsive teaching and curriculum is awfully important. And, having candid conversations with the teacher around those needs. Now, that question's pretty general, and that's another dissertation around, what to do and how to do it. I've been spending a lot of time generally working at our state level on how to propose and create and gain advocacy support for equity and gifted education. But I would have to say, if there is one thing that almost everybody is in favor of with regards to gifted education, it's equity. Everybody understands the need for more support there. In terms of what to do for your individual child, again, we have books and resources online. I don't know if that's what you're asking for or not, but if you go to Joy Lawson Davis or April Wells or Donna Ford, there's lots of people who have written about how to address those students' needs.
Absolutely. And so I guess, my follow-up question just to that would be just providing, because I'm not totally sure what they're looking for either in terms of that question, but okay, so let's just say I'm a parent, I'm not super happy, a little frustrated, having just a hard time even communicating with the school, because I think that certainly happens. I look on the NAGC website, I get a position paper and I'm like, I'm going to go give this to my school, right? So what what advice would you have for the people? So they know who they want to give it to, they know what they want to give them. What would your advice be to them to like do the best they can to be heard?
Well, first of all, it's got to be a collaborative effort, right? So you've got to engage with whoever you're talking with in terms of, here's something that we both want. We both want to see kids achieving higher. And I think this child has an opportunity to achieve a little bit higher. From there, again, it depends on what the specific aim is. And I think it's really important to be clear about what you want. Do you want your child to be identified? That's one set of things. Do you want a specific curriculum? Do you want them to have independent learning opportunities? So go in with some achievable goals so that they have something to hang on to. They understand what you're talking about. I guess the other thing is, again, in terms of finding opportunity to create change, is to see if you can find one or two others to talk with you, to go to the administrator with you, so that you're talking as a cohort and not as an individual who's got one child and one specific need to be met.
Thank you. And then another question that came up was you had been talking about the first equity policy. You were talking about the policy you just passed at NAGC. Can you give us a little bit more information about what that entailed? What policy is that?
It will be posted on the website before too long. Okay. But basically, it is our commitment to equity within the organization and equitable participation, being welcoming to all new members, regardless of their backgrounds, as well as our commitment to moving forward to create equity in gifted education across the nation.
Perfect. Well, I'm excited to read that, and I'm sure a lot of people are as well. A lot of us came into this field through that lens of equity, and so we're excited by NAGC's initiative and work in this space. So thank you for that. Yes. And I think just one final question that I have, unless anything else comes up on the chat here, is so how can people from Colorado, other states, obviously we have people on from other countries right now, how can we support the advocacy and legislation that happens in Washington, D.C. so that we can support you at NAGC and then in turn have that support us at the state level? Okay.
There are a couple of things. First of all, learn how to use your phone. Practice calling your legislator's office.
So first find your legislator or
find your legislator, yes, know who they are, but practice making that phone call to the office, because that's a very scary thing for people the first time. It feels quite imposing, but you need to get used to calling them. If you start doing it routinely to say where you support them as well as where you disagree or where you want something, then it's going to be easier for you to make that really important call saying we really want the Javits grant to be legislation to be renewed, or we really want the Advanced Equity Advanced Coursework Act passed. The other thing I would do is, again, advocacy is all about networks. And one of the things that we're finding is, again, there's lots of support for things like equity outside of gifted education. What we tend to hear in the media are the noisy few who want gifted education dismantled, but public opinion polling really supports the notion that most people want gifted education to be ubiquitous, right? The problem is not that it exists, it's that it only exists in pockets. So reach out to those other organizations outside of gifted education who you think will also support specific causes. Look for areas where people can engage in gifted education with what I like to call enlightened self-interest. For instance, one of the biggest problems that perpetuates inequities in gifted education is the fact that there is not universal teacher preparation in gifted education at the pre-service level. Well, I can't imagine a teacher who doesn't want or a parent rather, who doesn't want their teacher better prepared, right? So the issue of teacher preparation in gifted education is one where you can connect with other people, because any teacher who knows how to teach higher order thinking skills is going to teach all kids better. So think about, because anytime we go to ask for something to a state legislature, to a federal legislature, we're going to be seen as having our own interests in mind, right? But if you can get people outside, people who are interested in professional learning and enhanced professional learning, if you can find people who are interested in all aspects of equity in education and have them speak also alongside you, your message is going to be that much more powerful.
Create a coalition. I like it.
Yep.
Well, thank you so much, Dr. Gallagher, for joining us tonight. We're really excited for your tenure at NAGC to step up to that next level, and we look forward to having you come to future conversations with CAGT on other topics. So thank you so much. Thank you, everybody, and we hope you have a really great night.
Thank you. I'm looking forward to seeing you in Denver in just a little bit.